Hi, everyone. Deanna Cross-Palaio, Assistant Director of the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services. We really appreciate you all joining us here today for our second ever briefing with community-based organizations. Really, here at Cal OES, we know that you are a part of the change and the trusted messenger community to get out the word to Californians on the ground in regards to winter storms. Now that we go into the recovery phase of these storms, we have assembled a group of panelists here to talk to you a little bit about that, spread the information so that you can then also be empowered to share that information within the communities. We are going to go through a series of panelists, but first there's going to be a poll question for you asking whether you attended the last briefing and if you used any of our materials. I think that will go up right now. Take a second to vote on that, and we can kind of get some of those answers. And also, this is a process, right? And so if there's anything that you need that that will be helpful for your communities, don't hesitate to reach out to us and let us know what worked and what didn't work during this time as well. So with that, I hope you had a time to answer some of those questions. I'm going to hand it on over to the National Weather Service, David Lawrence, who's going to provide us an update on what he's seeing in the next few days. And I think that, David, you might have some good news for us.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, I do have some good news. This is David Lawrence from the National Weather Service. It's really great to be back with you. And it's even better to bring you great news that I think we're all waiting for. We'll get to that in just a second. But the first thing I want to focus on is that the majority, or in fact, all of these atmospheric river events that we saw, 9 of them in a row, they have ended. But we do still have one final system moving through much of the state as we go into the day on Wednesday and into early Thursday. I really want to stress that this is a fast mover and in many areas not expected to be overly impactful, but we will see some additional rain for the lower elevations and high elevation snow. Thankfully, rainfall amounts look to be less than 1/3 of an inch for much of the state. And again, most areas not expecting any major additional river rises or anything like that due to that lighter precipitation. The one area I do want to focus on, though, is the northern Sierra. That particular area is going to be slammed with one more round of pretty heavy snow beginning tomorrow afternoon and continuing into Wednesday night. We're looking for snowfall amounts of anywhere between 5 to 15 inches falling in a very short window of time, generally in less than 6 hours. So just be aware that there probably will be some significant travel impacts for the northern Sierra. And on that slide there, you can really see the weather pattern has shifted. No more storm tracks really pointing toward California like we've seen here in the recent 20 days or so, but instead they'll now be traversing up into the Pacific Northwest. And then by the time they get down here, not really having much of an impact. And if you could go to that next slide, please, you will see the key highlights we expect. And there's what we just talked about, additional rainfall amounts, overly light. Much of Southern California will not see any precipitation from this upcoming last storm. But again, focusing on the Sierra, the northern Sierra especially, be cognizant of travel impacts likely to develop through Wednesday night. Here's the good news, though. As we go forward, really no weather to speak of beginning Friday, and this is for the entire state, and that trend continues through the weekend and at least the first half of next week, if not the entire week. We're expecting no significant precipitation. In fact, most areas will see none at all, and that will really give us a chance to finally dry out after this barrage of storms we've seen over the last month or so. I do want to also focus that temperatures will actually be a little bit below normal. So if cooler weather is your thing, we will see some temperatures trending below normal for the rest of the month. But again, the good news here, after one more storm, no more weather of significance expected, probably through the end of the month. I'm very happy to take questions at the end, but as always, thank you so much for allowing us to be a part of your organizations.
Thanks, David. If you don't mind maybe sticking around until the end, and we're going to take questions then. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Brian Ferguson. He is our Deputy Director of Crisis Communications here at Cal OES, who's going to talk to you a little bit more about the work being done, not only as we start to get out of the response phase, but also going into the recovery phase. Brian?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for taking the time for joining us, and thank you for all the work you've done throughout the response phase of this operation. We've leaned forward in ways we haven't before with working with our community-based partners to put the word out. Indeed, the expanded nature of this rain and storm event has impacted 41 of our 58 counties in the state, and the impacts have been different across geographic areas, across different even within counties. And so, we continue to be activated around the clock here at our state operations center. There are first responders and state agencies continuing to do the work to protect communities, to shelter people, to do rescues. We've had over 1,400 rescues throughout this event. Many of them amongst, our most vulnerable populations are older people. And, this has also been one of our most deadly events, unfortunately, that we've had. We're now at 20 fatalities. If this was a wildfire, it'd be the fourth most deadly wildfire in state history. And, what we've learned is that so much of this event is muscle memory and community outreach of many of the deaths are preventable if we can get the word out. And that's why it's so important to work with partners like you across the state, to share some of the protective tips, and then to share, as we transition into the recovery phase, what the aid is that's available to communities. And that's where we find ourselves now. As our director and the governor's office have worked over the past couple of days of kind of evaluating the ongoing storm impacts, and we're very appreciative of David for bringing us good weather on that. But we now turn to looking back at our counties, our local governments, our communities, to truly understand what the impacts of this event have been. And those are going to be widespread and long lasting. And that's why we wanted to talk to you all today about the kind of resources we can do and the importance of community in supporting all Californians and getting resources, aid in a culturally, linguistically appropriate manner and accessing it in a timely way. As many of you saw last week, Governor Newsom requested and President Biden approved a federal major disaster declaration. The president has currently approved this disaster declaration for 3 counties, Merced, Sacramento, and Santa Cruz. That was based on the visit of his FEMA administrator, Deanne Criswell, who personally certified those counties to be under risk. We do anticipate many more counties to be added in the coming days. And the requirements for FEMA are that we actually go out into the communities and do damage assessments to count homes that were destroyed, physical infrastructure, property, and continue to add based on the impacts. And we are hopeful that, close to the 41 counties will receive some sort of federal aid. That may differ from county to county, depending on the width and breadth of the impacts. But our goal as a state is to maximize the federal support and reimbursement we can receive. That federal declaration approved by President Biden in most cases will mean that local governments can receive a cost share for 75% of their total costs. It also applies for individual assistance, which will open up federal programs like housing vouchers, crisis counseling, and other sorts of assistance to individuals who lost their homes or otherwise have impacts. In the coming days, we'll be opening up disaster resource centers and communities that are under the declaration. The first of those disaster resource centers will begin in Merced tomorrow, and we have one in Sacramento will be opening up soon. And those resource centers are one of the things we want to talk to you about. Is our colleagues at FEMA are very good at what they do of registering people, but these resource centers are only as good as our ability to turn out the community and provide them access to the federal benefits. And our goal is that anyone who needs them, who has been impacted, who meets the requirements, is able to access these federal support mechanisms. And our folks from Cal OES, through our Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, our Listos program, our Office of Access and Functional Needs, will be reaching out to you in the days to come if you are in some of these impacted communities, because we know in many cases you are better messengers than we are in helping your communities understand the impacts, to navigate the challenges of filling out forms, that may not always be drafted by the federal government in a manner that's appropriate or easy to access. And so one of the reasons we wanted to have this event today is to just kind of talk to you of, we are so pleased to be out of the response element, but our work here is not done, and we will continue to work to support the communities and get them back on their feet and help people rebuild and recover. And we have a number of people who are going to talk to you about this today, but from our OES family, we just want to thank you all for the work that you're doing, and know that we continue to look forward to leveraging your expertise, your support, and continue to partner with you in the days to come as we move into a recovery operation. With that, I'll hand it back over to the moderator.
Thanks, Brian. And I'm going to add a little plug too, is that, we have this major disaster declaration in Merced, Sacramento, and Santa Cruz counties. And if you are an organization there in those counties, we may be stopping by and asking for your help to not only get the word out, but also maybe we can kind of partner up on something. So really look forward, if you don't mind putting in the chat maybe and saying, hey, I'm in that county, happy to help, and our team will reach out to you and we can definitely coordinate on something in the future. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Vance Taylor. He's our Chief of Access and Functional, I'm not even saying it right, Chief of Access and Functional Needs Office, apologies. And he's going to talk a little bit about some of those benefits too. Vance?
Thanks, Deanna. Well, the title of the office doesn't matter, but what we do, but as a team is the important thing. And we just want to thank everybody for being a part of this team. One of the things that we recognize is that anytime there's a disaster, it's always individuals with disabilities, it's people that are older adults, it's anyone with what we would consider an access or a functional need that is hit the hardest. And this has been no exception. And so as we look to ensure that we pivot to recovery, we have to do so in a way that brings everyone along. And sometimes that means we have to make things more accessible, right? Sometimes that means 508 compliance. Other times it means providing things in multiple languages. I think a lot of times it means using plain or straightforward language. It also means making sure that as our federal partners come and roll out their programs, as they allow for these great benefits to come into the state and help people in impacted counties get back on the road to recovery, that they're doing it in a way that is equitable and thoughtful, and that's inclusive of the whole community. And so having community-based organizations working with us and partnered on that effort, it really means everything, because you're where the rubber meets the road. So thank you for that partnership. As we do pivot to recovery, we look at things like applying for FEMA disaster assistance. Everybody in those impacted counties that has some sort of damage, has experienced some sort of loss, needs to be applying for FEMA disaster assistance. If you go to disasterassistance.gov, it's a website. It's a very straightforward way to be able to register. You can use a FEMA mobile app. There's a phone number to dial, 1-800-621-3362. And ASL, video, and language services, including captioning, are also available for anyone that needs it. That said, maybe not everybody's got internet access, or maybe there are concerns about language barriers or literacy rates. If that's the case, just let us know, because there are resources available so that people can help individuals register by reading them questions and helping them fill out forms. We're very well aware that, particularly in what we would call our whole community, people are pushed to their physical and emotional limits. And so we want to make sure that we make this process as smooth for them as is possible. There are disaster survivor assistance teams that will go into the community and walk people through this registration. They'll do acute case management with them to help them navigate the process. These individuals have received disability etiquette training, as well as training on how to work with multicultural partners and CBOs. There's also mobile registration intake centers, which essentially means that you let us know where in the community they need to show up, and that's where they'll go. So please know that we're looking to you for guidance on this, and that guidance is necessary to make sure everybody can register, because once you do register, you can get access to programs like individual assistance that provides grant money, that helps replace essential items, damaged furniture, durable medical equipment, provides rental assistance, temporary housing. There are other programs like other needs assistance, low interest rates from SBA loans. And all of that is out there, but you have to register first. Now, while registration is important, while there's a lot of great info out there, it's also important to remember that just because we're going to have blue skies, hopefully sunny skies for the next week or so, I believe they said starting Thursday or Friday, disasters still happen, right? Dangerous weather could come back. Other events could occur. And so we're really hoping that you'll help us amplify the importance of getting people to sign up for emergency alerts. We want you to push people to calalerts.org and have them sign up for free emergency alerts. That way they can know what's coming, how do they prepare, and what's the appropriate action they need to take to be safe. The other thing we want people to do is to make an evacuation plan. We want them to think of people they can rely on that could assist them if they need help getting out. We want them to work with their support networks, and we want them to follow the guidance of local authorities. So when people say you gotta go, they gotta go. And of course, if shelters remain open, or if new ones come online, those are going to be physically and programmatically accessible. So we just can't forget that it's a very diverse risk landscape in California. We always have to plan today to be safe and prepared for tomorrow. With that, I'll turn it back to the moderator.
Thank you so much, Vance. Super helpful. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Jason Wilkin with the California Department of Public Health, maybe to talk a little bit more about, floodwaters and the do's and don'ts, and what folks can do when the waters recede. Dr. Wilkin?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, this information is intended for protecting the public's health when returning home following a flood, which many people in California are experiencing now. And really, the best advice for protecting yourself when returning home from a flood is to try and avoid floodwater whenever possible. Floodwater can contain all sorts of compounds and contaminants that you really don't want physical contact with. It can contain sewage and toilet water, hazardous chemicals, things like paint thinner or gasoline or pesticides. Also, floodwater is usually difficult to see through. It's often murky or muddy, and so it can hide heavy objects or sharp objects or other physical hazards. And there can even be live or dead animals as a result of either being carried by the water or the animals migrating as a result of the flood itself. So if you come into contact with floodwater, wash with soap and water. Or if you don't have clean water available, use hand sanitizer after coming in contact with floodwater. Keep in mind that children are particularly vulnerable. They're particularly susceptible to the illnesses that can be caused by floodwater. And of course, just by nature, children are more likely to want to play in floodwater or play with objects that have been in contact with floodwater. So don't let children play in floodwater. Don't let them play with toys that have gotten wet. Those toys do need to be cleaned and disinfected first. If you do have to touch floodwater, protect yourself. So that means covering your skin by using rubber boots and by wearing rubber gloves. So the routes of exposure for floodwater to cause illness, that's usually through the mouth or exposed skin or the eyes. And this can result in diarrhea, rash, other serious infections. So covering up your skin, making sure that you don't come in contact with anything that has touched floodwater, not eating or drinking around floodwater. Those are all critical things to keep you safe. Next slide, please. Okay, so floods can make the water itself in your household unsafe to drink. It can be also unsafe to use for cooking or washing or even brushing your teeth. And if you are on tap water or municipal water, then first thing you'll want to do is check with your water authorities, and they will tell you whether it is safe to use tap water or whether a boil notice or even a do not use notice are in effect. Now, if you have a well, and if that well has been flooded, you'll really want to contact your local environmental health department or your local water departments for advice on testing and on disinfecting your well. Bottled water itself is safe, but please keep in mind that the bottled water could have come in contact with flood water. That is, if the bottle itself was in contact with flood water, then the bottle has to be cleaned and disinfected before you drink from it. And the easiest way to do this is to boil the bottle for 1 minute before drinking. Now, flooding in your home can also make food unsafe to eat. And so that means that other than undamaged cans and metal pouches, you should throw away any fresh or packaged food or drinks that floodwater has touched. And in the case of undamaged cans and metal pouches, those really should be cleaned and disinfected before you consume the contents. So let's talk a little bit about cleaning and disinfection. Typical and highly recommended disinfectant is dissolving 1 tablespoon of bleach into 1 gallon of water. That's great for cleaning surfaces and utensils. But I would caution you to never mix any cleaners together. Bleach and ammonia, for example, if you mix those two, that causes chlorine gas to be released, and that can quickly overcome people. People have died from being in proximity to, or from mixing household cleaners in poorly ventilated areas. So never mix cleaners together, never mix anything with bleach other than water. And finally, a lot of people are going to have to deal with mold as a result of the floods. And so drying your home and removing the water damaged items, that really is the most important step for preventing mold. Mold growth can be assumed if items have been in contact with floodwater for more than 48 hours. And mold can be cleaned off of hard surfaces with a bleach solution. But really, again, the key is getting those water damaged items out of the home and drying the home as soon as possible. You can contact your local environmental health department for guidance on mold remediation. And let's go to the next slide. And shown here are a couple of useful links. There's a link to the CDC on how to handle floods, or excuse me, on coming home after a flood and the hazards that you might encounter. And then on CDPH's website, there's also extensive information about mold, including things like tenants' rights in dealing with the building owner and dealing with code enforcement. So with that, I'll end here, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that have come in through the chat later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wilkin. I now want to scrub my home clean. My husband will be very excited about that. We have another poll question, I think. Please let me know if I am mistaken, but do you think that, you know, kind of hearing some of this information that you'll be assisting with recovery efforts in your region? Let us know. I received numerous contact information through the Q&A part of this webinar, and so we really appreciate all the help that you're doing there. I'm going to now pass it on over to Director Kim Johnson with the Department of Developmental Services, Department of Social Services. I apologize, not having a great time today with introducing folks. I'm here to talk to us a little bit more of kind of like the wraparound services and help there with Californians.
Thank you so much, and glad to be here. And I also just want to start and echo my appreciation to all of you for all that you're doing in communities, both at the same time caring for yourselves and households likely through these events, as well as for others. So really appreciate your partnership across the board. Just to give you a sense, last night, there were 755 individuals being supported in those temporary shelters that have been set up, 22 congregate sites, 4 non-congregate, and that's across 11 counties. So again, still a significant need, and a lot of people impacted obviously by the events. And want to just say once again, we've been putting this out and appreciate your affirming and echoing this message that all are welcome at these shelters. No identifications required in terms of accessing this particular resource. And that's what we're here to talk about, are those resources. I will put some links. You actually have some on the screen here. I'll put them in the chat also just to make sure everyone has them. But cdss.ca.gov, right now on our homepage, you can get linked to our disaster assistance center and have access to our disaster resource guide for a variety of benefits and resources available: cash assistance, food assistance, housing assistance. We also have a specific guide around support for immigrant communities. So that's available in English and Spanish, and again, available on our website right now. There are some resources that are turned on now. So for example, for the 5 million individuals across California who currently participate in our CalFresh, our food assistance program, any of those individuals who have been impacted maybe with loss of power, obviously floods, these kinds of things, if they have essentially lost their food supports, they can, within the first 10 days of that loss, connect with their county social service agency to get replacement of that lost food. So that's available today for those who are impacted. As we are seeing this major declaration approved, as was mentioned previously, in 3 counties, and again, expecting others, we'll also be submitting up to the federal government a request to turn on Disaster CalFresh. That's a very specific program. And again, please take a look at the resource guide for more information about that. But that is available regardless of immigration status in terms of food assistance support for those who have been impacted in communities. So again, Disaster CalFresh, more information will be coming soon about how to access that particular resource. I want to note again that Again, this is a lot for everyone, stress and just navigating through it all. So you can see on the screen here, just giving people resources to connect to others to help process it all. Having a compassionate person on the other line to engage with, and that's Cal Hope. So again, 1-833-317-HOPE, or you can visit calhope.org. We also have a specific line for older adults and our loved ones. And of course, they may have had visitors coming throughout the week that maybe they cannot get access to this week, right? Just other ways in which we want to make sure, again, everyone has someone to talk to engage with. So we do have a friendship line for older adults, and that's available at 1-888-670-1360. So again, kind of a wide range of supports, whether it's just someone to talk to or needing cash assistance, food assistance, housing assistance. Some of these things will be available at the federal level, but others are available today at the state level, at the county level. And again, really appreciate your partnership in getting the word out about these resources to connect to, and also any other unmet needs that we should be aware of. So thank you again for your partnership in these efforts.
Thank you so much, Director. Really appreciate the information and your time. I'm gonna maybe change it up a bit. We're gonna go next in 1 second to Department of Insurance, Julia Juarez. But first, I'm seeing a few questions in the chat and my brain is still on disinfecting my home. So I was hoping that Dr. Wilkin can maybe answer some of these questions. There's one from Carla on any recommendation regarding mildew often experienced in the home and how it can affect illnesses even after heavy rains. And then there was another question on whether some water bottles need to do a quick little boil. So not sure if you're still on, Doctor, and you could give us an answer to that.
Yes, I'm still on. Can you hear me? Okay, great.
Perfect.
Yes, so I would recommend that you consult the CDPH mold page that is part of this presentation that's got good information about the health effects of mold and recommendations for cleaning. I would say your local environmental health, or if you're a renter, code enforcement is always good to talk to if you have specific questions about mold that are beyond whatever is in that on that web page. And then the question about bottles of water. Yeah, sealed water bottles, the water itself inside, it should still be considered drinkable, even if the bottle has been exposed to flood water. But the outside of the bottle might be contaminated, and you could get harmful germs if you drink from that bottle. So what we would recommend is for a sealed bottle that has been in contact with flood water, put that sealed bottle into boiling water for 1 minute, take it back out. That means the outside of the bottle is now considered disinfected and the water should be safe to drink.
Thank you so much, Doctor, and thank you for humoring us.
No, it's a great question. Water is heavy. People usually have it down at ground level, and that's where flood water comes in. So those bottles of water often come in contact with flood water. It's a great question.
Thank you so much. All right. Now, hopefully all my cleaning questions answered. Going back now to Julia Juarez with the California Department of Insurance, who's going to talk to us a little bit about some resources available to us all during this time. Julia?
Thank you so much. Okay, thank you. I seem to be having some internet issues, so I apologize for not being on camera. But I am delighted to be here with you all with the California Department of Insurance. I wanted to just give you a general overview of some of the questions that we are receiving at the department. For instance, the biggest issue that we have that people are asking is, with storm damage, can cars that have been flooded, be covered by insurance? And so the answer to that is absolutely. If you have comprehensive auto insurance, that does cover flood and storm damage to your cars. Now, home and renters insurance does cover fallen trees and wind damage. If you are in an area where there was a prior wildfire, so that might, your mudslides or debris flow from that might be covered by home and renters insurance. However, I suggest that you check our website at insurance.ca.gov to see if your zip code is part of that and that you are able to care of this as well. So we have flood insurance, this in general is sold separately through the National Flood Insurance Program. And it takes effect at least 30 days after you purchase in most cases. So it's not like, now that you have any type of, now that you have an issue that you can go get insurance and then cover it for your issues now, but rather that is something that you do have to get prior. So you would have about 30 days for that. So so those are the general questions that we are receiving from the department. Now, the Department of Insurance has insurance experts available during business hours that can help answer your specific questions. So you as an organization, you normally get, people, because you're on the ground, the people that come to you have very specific questions about insurance. Know that you can easily call our asked by people who will answer you immediately. The department has a very good return call policy. If you happen to go into our voicemail, that will actually come in. You will get a return call within 1 to 2 minutes. So the Department of Insurance is very much so available for you, and we can review your policy. So when people call you, our policy directly, try to find answers with them, and we can contact an insurance company and work with you on that as well. We can go to the next slide. We want to give you some tips on insurance claims. If you do have a claim that you do need to use, then we certainly just that you within your insurance policy, you review it, you contact your insurance agent, and whatever conversations that you have, make sure you take very good notes, and put together like a claims diary of sorts, where you can really, just keep track of everything that has been said, and in that way there is no confusion or miscommunication. If you do because of any type of issue, and you will be using a hotel or any type of like restaurants because you're not able to cook at home or any of that, please make sure that you keep track of all your expenses, so that your insurance company will be able to reimburse you for that. So it's extremely important that you keep track of that, keep your receipts, and then of course take pictures and video of all your damages, but don't remediate until an adjuster inspects the home. So don't make any changes to that unless an adjuster inspects it. But please take pictures, videos, make sure that you have all of that together. And then finally, we want to make sure that you don't get scammed. There are licensed contractors that are available for you, and so you can certainly find those folks through the licensed contractors licensing board. But during this time, you will get bombarded by people who may come to you to say that they want to help. However, that is not that is not ultimately what they're doing. They might be trying to scam you. So the Department of Insurance has we have a fraud department that will go door to door and inform people who have been in areas that have had some type of disaster, and we'll let them know. It's like, these are the phone numbers that you can call so that you can get help, but don't so that you don't you are not taken advantage of. And also, we at the Department of Insurance can work with you as nonprofit organizations, as trusted messengers. You may be putting together some, events where you're informing the community. Our department of Community Relations and Outreach is available to make presentations to your local communities, to senior centers. Seniors are extremely vulnerable during this time, so we are certainly available to help put together some presentations and inform communities with you. So we are happy to work with you. You can call our 800 number, 800-927-4357, or you can even you can contact us through email. Our email is CROB, which is Community Relations and Outreach Branch, at insurance.ca.gov. So we are certainly available to work with you, and we can certainly do that. And like I said, we do have a whole department that is also available to help specifically, not just inform people, but also if you are approached by someone who has been taken advantage of. And it is, it has any type of issue with insurance, we are certainly, able to come in and help with that as well. So please give us a call, and we are available through that, and also through the chat feature with insurance at insurance.ca.gov. So if you have any other questions, we are available to you from that point. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Julia. Appreciate your time. I've gotten quite a few Q&A, some questions in the Q&A feature, so feel free to send them on over. We do have one for Julia, so don't leave us just yet. There was a question about qualifications for insurance needs with car, home, and renters coverage. Do you know anything more about that, or are you going to recommend folks to go to your hotline?
Yes, absolutely. Because there is very specific things depending on the type of insurance that the person has. We like to, rather than give you just general answers that may not apply to whatever issue that this person might be going through, it's very important that you know that we are available through our 800 number, and that people can go, can look at very specific things through through the policy and can answer questions that way.
Thank you so much. I'm going to shoot some over to Brian Ferguson. So we're getting quite a few questions, and maybe you want to tee it up first. I know we talked last week about the emergency declaration we received for the 41 counties. Now we've gotten the major for 3. They're asking about the difference between the 2, and then ultimately how does that work, between counties, and who can apply?
Yeah, thank you for that. And, obviously the federal aid is a pretty complex and bureaucratic issue. And, that's why we're here to help interpret it. So the emergency declaration, which is what you heard about first, provides direct support for response operations. So that's helicopters, personnel, sheltering kits, commodities for the response operation. In the federal major disaster declaration is more post-event. So that will be all the resources to help the communities after the event. And so all 58 counties were eligible for aid under the emergency declaration, which came initially, and we use that far and wide up and down our state. The federal major disaster declaration, as we stand here this afternoon, there are 3 counties approved for that. We do expect that to expand significantly in the days to come. And our goal ultimately is to have it be as widespread as possible, so as many people can take advantage of that support and resources as we can. Certainly, there are some requirements put in place by the federal government in terms of eligibility and what counties meet that threshold. But our goal is to take as open-minded of a look as we can, and advocating for as many communities to receive aid as we feasibly can.
Thank you so much, Brian. While you're still featured here in the hot seat, there's a question too about FEMA relief with folks who maybe lost some income because of the rain? And then also, whether undocumented community members can apply for FEMA disaster assistance, if you don't mind answering that also.
Yeah, this is a question we commonly get, and something we work to support our communities on. So the requirements set in place by the federal government require that there be someone in the household who has a Social Security card to be registered for aid. So that doesn't mean that everyone in the household must have documentation, but if there's a child or perhaps a grandparent, as long as there's one person in the household with federal government documentation, they would be eligible, the whole household would be eligible for benefits. And one of the things we as a state work really hard to do is fill some of the gaps in aid, understanding that immigration status can be a barrier for many folks here in California. And, working with our partners like Director Johnson and, even our philanthropic partners, we try to fill that void where there are gaps where people can't receive the maximum amount of aid.
Thank you, Brian. Really appreciate that. Maybe I have one for Vance now. I know, Vance, you've been a part of this Priority Populations Task Force that has brought together Cal OES and other state agency partners and working with local governments. Do you mind, there's a question about maybe tangible supplies that are available to distribute to disaster survivors. Do you have a little bit more on that?
Sure. So one of the things that we want to do is get information out there. It's a great question. One of the resources that we have allows community-based organizations to put in requests, things like clothes, right? Gloves, tents, things that individuals might need. And then private sector partners are able to look at that list and fulfill requests where possible. So I'm happy to put a link for that resource in the chat. And that's one really great way for people to get tangible physical resources and assets that are going to be donated.
Thanks, Vance. Send that over, and then if it's not now, we'll put it in the roundup email that we send to participants at the end of this. Maybe another one for you, Brian. I'm seeing a question. Santa Cruz County is currently completing assessments. How can we help with assessments in Monterey County, or maybe in some of the other counties, to kind of help with the damage assessments?
Yes, we love this question, and ultimately the submittal to the state will come from county officials. But things that local partners can do is help document damage, particularly via photos, video, mapping, and any data we can use to justify will be incredibly helpful. And so, doing that work now on the front end can help you not only as like a homeowner or community member if you're applying for insurance, as was talked about by our colleague from the Department of Insurance, but that same sort of documentation can also help the county make their case to the federal government. And so by chronicling and documenting and working with your county Office of Emergency Services, and if you need a connection there, we can help facilitate that connection. But the more people we have working on this and helping counties who oftentimes may have 1, 2, 3 people whose job it is to do these damage surveys for the whole county, we can actually expedite aid and get those programs turned on faster.
Thanks, Brian. Maybe 2 more, but please feel free to keep the questions coming. I have 2 more in the queue. So there's a question from Nancy, concerned about immigrant workers that will be hired to do cleaning in private homes. Any recommendations? I don't know if maybe Vance or maybe the Director Johnson would have a little bit more information. At first I was thinking maybe a health focus, but it might also just be a concern when it comes to kind of working with the federal government as well.
Vance, I'll defer to you if you have ideas here, but I think we should also just make sure there's a connection with Department of Industrial Relations in relationship to kind of work standards and workplace safety in Cal OSHA as well. We can certainly make sure there's links and resource connection there.
Yeah, that's a resource I was going to point to, just to make sure that fair labor practices are being monitored and people are in a situation where it's great to have a job, but you got to be protected in that job, and there's got to be safety there. especially when you're dealing with, as the doctor was saying, a lot of chemicals, compounds. Can't take any risks.
Thank you both so much for that. I see Caridad Vázquez, agradezco enormemente la interpretación, es muchísima información de suma importancia para la comunidad de primera mano. Les queremos decir que tenemos también recursos en español en listoscalifornia.org. Ahí puede recibir todos los recursos. We have multilingual resources, listoscalifornia.org, not only in Spanish, but in other languages as well, and specifically also tips for what to do after a flood in particular. Looking at just a few more questions. There's a question in Spanish. I'll ask it in Spanish, and I'm more than happy to also say it in Spanish, but maybe I'll throw it back out to Vance, and maybe Vance, you can show off your Spanish as well. ¿Cuál es el acercamiento para la comunidad agrícola? ¿De qué forma los están ayudando? And so how are we helping our kind of agricultural farm worker community during this time?
Yeah, so, okay, voy a tratar en español a ver cómo hacemos. Una de las cosas que queremos hacer es asegurar que cuando la gente están trabajando, que están trabajando en condiciones que son seguros. Y como estás afuera, en la tierra donde ha caído mucha agua y también los inundientos, tenemos que tener cuidado porque no queremos que nadie se dañe con estar cerca de los químicos. La primera cosa que vamos a hacer es asegurar que los químicos que son peligrosos, que todo está sanitizado y que vamos a limpiar esas áreas. Así gente pueden volver, ir a trabajar, ojalá que lo más pronto que posible.
Thank you so much, Vance. Really appreciate it. Basically said, trying to do all the touches that we can with our farm worker and agricultural communities, given the fact that there is possibility to be in contact with kind of those flood waters that are could contain contaminants and other dangerous chemicals and things within the water. I think I'm going to wrap it up. I really appreciate all of you. I appreciate the time. We will be sending over a comprehensive email that will have the PowerPoint, the resources, and also a recording of this if you want to rewatch it over, and anything else that you guys may need. Don't hesitate to reach out to us. We really appreciate you all being trusted messengers in this process. Much appreciation to our panelists also for lending their expertise and their time during this very busy time. And we hope that together we can help Californians get through this next phase in recovery. And so don't forget, spread the word, spread the love in regards to these resources, and we will touch base shortly, I'm sure. Thank you so much.